When Michael Jackson died in June of 2009, he was reportedly around $500 million in debt. Not 5 million. 500 million. The most famous entertainer on the planet, the man who made the best-selling album in history, was, on paper, one of the most indebted people in show business. And yet today, his estate has reportedly earned more than $2 billion, every debt paid off in full. That reversal wasn't luck, and it wasn't magic. It came down to a single decision he made when he was 26 years old, a decision that almost nobody around him understood at the time. Here's what makes this story different from every other celebrity money story you've heard. Michael Jackson got almost everything wrong. He overspent on a scale that's difficult to even describe. He borrowed against everything he had. He ignored warnings for years. By almost every measure, he is a cautionary tale. But he got one thing right. Exactly one. And that single decision was so powerful that it eventually paid off every mistake he ever made, and then kept paying for more than a decade after he was gone. Stay with me, because once you see what he bought in 1985, you'll never think about money the same way again. Start with how the money came in, because the scale is genuinely hard to picture. In 1982, Michael Jackson released Thriller, and it didn't just sell well. It became the best-selling album ever made, with sales reported in the tens of millions of copies worldwide. He followed it with Bad and Dangerous, both enormous global hits. He toured stadiums on multiple continents. He signed endorsement deals that were, at the time, among the richest ever offered to a musician. Through the 1980s and into the 1990s, Michael Jackson wasn't merely a successful artist. He was one of the highest-earning entertainers on earth, in any field, in any medium. The money arriving in his accounts during those years was, by any reasonable standard, generational wealth. The kind of money that, handled carefully, should have made him and his family secure for a century. Which makes what follows so instructive, because an enormous income and a lasting fortune are not the same thing, and the distance between them is where this entire story lives. Now here's the moment everything turns on. In 1985, Michael Jackson was 26 years old and sitting on the biggest album in the world. He could have bought anything. Instead, he spent a reported $47.5 million on something that most people his age would have found almost comically boring: a music publishing catalog. It was called ATV Music, and it held the publishing rights to more than 250 songs, written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. The Beatles catalog. Here's the detail people love. Paul McCartney himself had reportedly explained to Jackson years earlier how lucrative music publishing could be as an investment. Jackson listened, and when the catalog came up for sale, Jackson outbid him for it. Think about what publishing actually means. Every time one of those songs is played on the radio, used in a film, covered by another artist, or sung in a commercial, the owner of the publishing gets paid, not the performer. The owner, Michael Jackson, at 26, bought a machine that would collect money automatically, forever, whether he ever recorded another note or not. 10 years later, in 1995, he merged that catalog with Sony's publishing arm and reportedly kept a 50% stake in the combined company, one of the largest music publishers on the planet. And consider what he actually understood at 26 that most people never work out at all. Everyone around him was buying things that lose value the moment you own them. Cars, clothes, houses that cost money every month. He bought a stream of income instead. Not something to enjoy, something to collect from. It was, by almost any measure, one of the smartest purchases anyone in entertainment has ever made. And then he spent the next 20 years doing almost the exact opposite with everything else. Neverland Ranch alone is a study in how money disappears. It was a private estate with an amusement park, a zoo, a railroad, and a full-time staff. And by many accounts, it cost him something in the range of $10 million a year to keep the lights on and the animals fed. That's before a single purchase. Then add the shopping. Jackson's spending on art, antiques, and one-off extravagances became legendary in its own right, reportedly running to tens of millions of dollars in years when his income had already begun to slide. And this is the mechanism that matters. Because he owned an asset of tremendous value, he could borrow against it. So he did, again and again. The catalog became collateral. Loans stacked on loans. By the middle of the 2000s, the interest payments alone had become crushing, and in 2008, Neverland itself came within days of foreclosure before an investment firm stepped in and bought the loan. Understand what was happening here. His one great decision was quietly funding his worst ones. The asset was real, and it was strong enough to borrow against, which meant it was strong enough to hide the damage for 2 decades. By 2009, the math had run out of room. Michael Jackson was reportedly close to $500 million in debt. He had signed on to perform 50 concerts in London, a residency called This Is It, that was widely understood to be the plan for digging himself out. He was in rehearsals for it when he died on June the 25th, 2009. And at that precise moment, the situation looked genuinely hopeless. The estate of the King of Pop was, on paper, deeply insolvent, a mountain of debt, an income stream that had stopped, and no obvious way to service any of it. Anyone reading the balance sheet that summer would have told you this story ends the way most of these stories end, in liquidation, with creditors picking through what's left. But that isn't what happened. Not even close. Because the machine he bought in 1985 was still running. The executors of his estate took over and began working the assets rather than selling them off in a panic. The concert rehearsal footage was released as a film and reportedly earned hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide. Stage productions followed. And then, in 2016, the estate sold its stake in the Sony Publishing Company for a reported $750 million. A single transaction that dwarfed the entire debt. Later catalog deals reportedly valued his music at over $1 billion more. Every dollar Michael Jackson owed was paid. In the years since his death, his estate has reportedly generated more than $2 billion, making him one of the highest-earning entertainers in the world in years when he was no longer alive to earn anything at all. Sit with that for a second. The debt was real, and it was enormous, and it very nearly buried him while he was alive. But the asset was bigger. And crucially, the asset didn't need him. It kept working after the concert stopped, after the headlines stopped, after he was gone entirely. So here's what to take from all of it. What you own outlives what you owe. Michael Jackson's spending was frankly indefensible, and it nearly destroyed him while he was alive. But he made one decision at 26 that was strong enough to carry every mistake that came after it, because he bought something that generated money on its own, without him, permanently. That's the difference between earning and owning, and it is the single most important distinction in personal finance. A paycheck stops the moment you stop. An asset doesn't. And notice the uncomfortable half of this, because it matters just as much. The very strength of that asset is what let him borrow against it for 20 years and postpone every hard conversation. Ownership gave him a machine, and it also gave him a way to avoid facing the truth. So the lesson cuts both ways. Own things that pay you while you sleep, and then don't spend the next 20 years borrowing against them. He got the first half brilliantly right. The second half is the part he never solved. If this changed the way you think about owning versus earning, that's exactly why this channel exists. The real stories behind the money and the lessons hiding inside them. Subscribe and stick around, because the next story is about a man who did the precise opposite of what you just watched. He sold the thing that would have made him richer than anyone imagined. You won't want to miss it.